The strategic partnership between India and the United States, once seen as an indispensable pillar of future global stability, has abruptly entered a period of profound uncertainty and deep-seated distrust. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The optimistic narrative, largely built on the highly publicized personal rapport between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump, has been shattered by a series of aggressive and unilateral American actions. This is not a mere temporary trade dispute, it is a fundamental breach of trust that is forcing India to confront long-held historical suspicions about U.S. reliability, a sentiment that has guided its foreign policy for decades. The current situation has laid bare the fragility of an alliance that, for all its public fanfare and symbolic gestures, was always more a matter of transactional convenience and convergent interests than of a shared destiny. India now finds itself at a critical diplomatic crossroads, compelled to re-evaluate its geopolitical alignment and navigate a complex and rapidly evolving landscape that feels both new in its immediate pressures and eerily familiar in its underlying dynamics. A devastating betrayal. The diplomatic shockwave of unilateral action. The immediate catalyst for this diplomatic breakdown was the Trump administration's abrupt and unannounced imposition of a devastating 50% tariff on a range of Indian goods. This punitive action, delivered without any prior consultation or warning, struck New Delhi as a deliberate act of hostility. Indian policymakers, who had been engaged in good faith negotiations to secure an interim trade deal to mitigate the impact of the initial 25% tariffs, found their efforts not just ignored, but actively punished. The additional 25% tariff was explicitly framed as a direct and explicit penalty for India's ongoing, and economically essential, purchase of discounted Russian crude oil. The sense of betrayal was palpable, a diplomatic, et tu, brute moment that shattered the illusion of a special, non-transactional relationship. This action exposed a cold, transactional core beneath the public displays of friendship, forcing India to re-evaluate its entire strategic framework. The swiftness and severity of the U.S. action underscores the fact that in the world of high-stakes diplomacy, personal chemistry and public rhetoric are no match for a nation's perceived self-interest, leaving India to question the very foundation of its recent engagement with the United States. This move has been interpreted as a clear message from Washington that New Delhi's strategic autonomy, particularly its energy security and historical ties, will not be tolerated if they conflict with American interests. The diplomatic shockwave has reverberated across India's political and economic circles, leading to a sense of profound disillusionment and distrust that will be difficult to mend. The hypocrisy of power and shifting strategic sands. The U.S.'s actions are riddled with contradictions that expose a deeper and more cynical strategic calculus. The most glaring inconsistency is the U.S.'s inexplicable leniency toward China. While India is being punished for its Russian oil purchases, China, a far larger and more significant consumer of the same oil, has been granted a reprieve from tariffs. This differential treatment reveals a clear power dynamic. The U.S. is seemingly willing to accommodate its primary economic rival while punishing a less powerful partner. China's significant leverage, particularly its near-monopoly control over critical resources like rare earth magnets, grants it a strategic immunity that India simply lacks. This blatant hypocrisy is further compounded by the fact that the U.S. had previously encouraged India, and other nations, to buy discounted Russian oil as a means to stabilize volatile global crude prices and prevent a repeat of the economic shocks of the 1970s, a strategy that now serves as the pretext for sanctions. The public criticism from Trump's key trade advisor, Peter Navarro, who brazenly labeled the Ukraine conflict, India's war, adds a layer of hostility and misrepresentation that makes diplomatic resolution even more challenging. These actions demonstrate a blatant disregard for India's legitimate strategic interests and its need for affordable energy to fuel its growing economy. The U.S. seems to be signaling that its allies' interests are secondary to its own perceived geopolitical and economic goals, creating a climate of profound distrust that will be difficult to repair. The selective application of punitive measures undermines the very notion of a values-based alliance and reinforces the perception of the U.S. as a fair-weather friend. Drawing lessons from a painful history. For Indian policymakers, this episode is not an isolated event but a painful echo of the past, reinforcing a long-held suspicion of U.S. foreign policy. The article poignantly recalls the events of 1971, when then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi sought U.S. assistance during the humanitarian crisis sparked by the persecution in East Pakistan. Her appeal was met with cold indifference from President Richard Nixon and a volley of condescending insults from his confidant, Henry Kissinger. That betrayal drove India firmly into the Soviet orbit, forging a relationship that proved its strategic value when a Soviet nuclear submarine in the Bay of Bengal deterred the U.S. Seventh Fleet from intervening on behalf of Pakistan. This history of U.S. unreliability, coupled with its consistent support for Pakistan despite the latter's complicity in terrorism and separatist movements, has cemented a deep-seated caution in New Delhi's diplomatic approach. The current U.S. tariffs are seen not as an anomaly but as the latest in a series of actions that confirm Washington's transactional and often self-serving approach to its allies. This historical memory acts as a powerful guide, urging India to prioritize self-reliance and diversified alliances over a singular dependence on the U.S. The lessons of the 1970s, now recontextualized by a new administration, provide a clear and compelling justification for India's historical policy of strategic autonomy. The diplomatic wound from 1971 has never fully healed, and the current crisis is pouring salt into it, reminding India that its best interests are served by a policy of non-alignment and strategic independence. The formation of a new geopolitical bloc. In the wake of this diplomatic fallout, India has found itself in a rapidly shifting geopolitical landscape. The punitive U.S. actions have inadvertently pushed India closer to its traditional partners, Russia and China. In a move that would have been unthinkable just a few years ago, China has publicly criticized the U.S. tariffs on India, extending an olive branch of diplomatic solidarity. This remarkable gesture, coming amidst their own lingering border tensions, signals a new willingness to find common ground in the face of a perceived common threat from the West. The upcoming Shanghai Cooperation Organization (SCO) summit, where leaders from India, Russia, and China will meet, is now fraught with new significance. It raises the distinct possibility of a new triumvirate designed to counter U.S. influence. These nations, already part of the BRICS bloc, are increasingly finding reasons to cooperate on economic and security matters. Brazil, also a target of U.S. tariffs, has voiced its support for a more independent foreign policy, further strengthening the possibility of a united front against American unilateralism. Ultimately, China is emerging as the biggest winner in this scenario. Its economic might and diplomatic prowess have allowed it to effectively weather the U.S. trade war and now position itself as a strategic partner to nations disillusioned with American leadership. The recent meetings between Chinese and Indian foreign ministers, aimed at de-escalating border tensions and restarting commercial ties, are concrete steps toward building this new alignment, suggesting that a multipolar world order is not just a theoretical concept but a rapidly unfolding reality. This new convergence signals a significant challenge to the US-led global order, one that is being accelerated by the very actions intended to preserve it. The US gambit of isolating India has backfired, creating a new diplomatic alignment that could profoundly reshape global power dynamics for decades to come. A new diplomatic epoch. India's strategic re-evaluation. The diplomatic crisis precipitated by the Trump administration has become a pivotal moment for India's foreign policy. The article argues that India is being forced to shed its recent, and perhaps naive, optimism about a steadfast partnership with the US. Instead, it is reverting to a more pragmatic and historically informed approach. This shift is not just reactive but also strategic, as India seeks to safeguard its national interests in a world where old allegiances are proving unreliable. The renewed focus on a multi-vectored foreign policy, one that does not place all its eggs in the American basket, is gaining traction in New Delhi. This involves not only strengthening ties with Russia and China but also exploring new avenues of cooperation with other regional powers and blocs. The push for greater economic and trade cooperation within BRICS, for instance, is a direct response to U.S. tariffs and a collective effort to reduce dependence on the U.S. dollar and Western-dominated financial systems. The convergence of interests among these nations, all of whom have been targeted by U.S. trade policies, provides a powerful incentive for a united front. Furthermore, the article suggests that this crisis offers a unique opportunity for China and India to reset their often strained relationship. By publicly criticizing the U.S. tariffs, China has shown a willingness to align with India on a matter of shared concern, potentially paving the way for a new era of cooperation.